Joe's always been known as a very sharp dresser. Matter of fact, just the other day, he picked up 3 paternity suits. Joe.
Go into any bar this weekend and watch a football game and see how many black guy, white guy, Asian guy, Hispanic guy you see sitting together.
Comfortable
Never,
acting?
never. And it's the kind of thing Norman would say to me, we'd have these dramatic things. He says, now, didn't that feel good?
For decades, Jimmy Walker, the legendary star of Good Times, lived surrounded by rumors. People said he was nothing more than a clown who embarrassed the community. They whispered about his out-of-step political views that made all of Hollywood turn its back on him. They questioned why, at 78 years old, he was still alone, with no wife, no children, no family. All those questions were brushed aside by his silence. But now, at 78, Walker has torn down that wall. He has spoken out, confirming what the public had been whispering for years. And the truth is even more shocking than anyone imagined. Are you enjoying this story, Jimmy Walker, Good Times? Then help the channel grow. Look, 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you're part of that group, take the chance and subscribe right now. It's free, and that way you'll keep receiving amazing stories from TV shows that we still miss a lot. And don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll find more stories like this one. Jimmy Walker, Good Times, Bronx, New York, 1947. In a cramped neighborhood where car horns drowned out sleep, a black baby boy was born. No one knew he would one day make all of America laugh. That boy was James Carter Walker Jr., the man the world would come to know as Jimmy Walker. His childhood was far from easy. His mother worked tough labor jobs, his father was absent, and the family struggled to get by. Jimmy often recalled that they had nothing but hope, and if you didn't find a way out, the Bronx would swallow you whole. That harsh reality became the very force that pushed the skinny boy to dream of something bigger. In 1964, at just 17, Walker happened to hear a stand-up comedy show on the radio. It was a moment of revelation, and he decided to give comedy a try. With no schooling, no teacher, Jimmy simply stood in front of the mirror, practicing every expression, every pause, with no money and no connections. All he had was his voice and a knack for self-deprecating humor that left audiences in stitches. Walker quickly realized that laughter had the power to heal. It turned a poor kid into the center of attention in any room. By the late 60s, Walker was testing himself in small nightclubs across New York, and in those smoke-filled clubs, he sharpened every beat, every punchline, carving out a style that was unique. The turning point came with Good Times. In the early 1970s, American television began looking for ways to bring more black representation to the small screen. Shows like Sanford & Son and The Jeffersons paved the way for a new generation of sitcoms. Programs that were not only entertaining, but also reflections of society. In that climate, producer Norman Lear, the legendary mind behind All in the Family, was preparing a new project, Good Times. Lear wanted a young, funny, and different kind of character. And Jimmy Walker, the skinny kid from the Bronx, caught his eye. No one expected much, but when Walker auditioned with his off-the-cuff style, Lear burst out laughing. The decision was immediate. Walker would be J.J. Evans, a character who brought the raw energy of the Bronx straight to the screen. Good Times premiered in 1974. At first, J.J. was only a supporting character, but everything changed when Walker suddenly shouted "Dynamite" in his piercing voice. The audience erupted with laughter. CBS immediately asked the writers to include the catchphrase in future episodes. Within months, Dynamite spread across America. Kids shouted it on playgrounds. Adults repeated it in bars. And even President Gerald Ford had heard of it. From an unknown comic, Walker became a national star overnight. TV Guide called him the breakout face of 70s sitcoms. Time magazine praised Dynamite as proof of fame to fast. A shadow too large dot when Good Times hit peak ratings. Walker was only in his early 20s. In just one season, Jimmy Walker had gone from an obscure club comic to a national star. He appeared on Time, on TV Guide, was invited onto talk shows everywhere, and even performed comedy for the president. For Americans, Walker was a familiar face on their TV screens every evening, a beloved member of the sitcom family. But that blinding spotlight soon began to burn his relationships, planting the seeds of the turmoil that would explode behind the scenes. Dynamite became a national catchphrase, and Jimmy Walker was suddenly the brightest star. CBS celebrated sky-high ratings, but behind the scenes, tensions were already brewing. The role of JJ quickly began to overshadow the presence of the parents, played by Esther and John Amos. Both were seasoned actors. They believed Good Times had been created to portray the real struggles of a poor black family, to show audiences resilience and love in the face of hardship. But Walker's JJ was increasingly being turned into nothing more than a buffoon. In a 1975 interview with Ebony, Esther didn't hide her frustration, saying that JJ wasn't a role model. He was a clown, and they didn't need a clown. They needed characters with depth, with responsibility, who truly represented black people. That statement was like a dagger aimed straight at Jimmy Walker's image, the very figure viewers saw as the soul of the show. The conflict didn't stop at words. John Amos, who played Father James Evans, openly clashed with the writers and producers, insisting the show had turned into a joke that demeaned the image of black people. In 1976, after just 2 seasons, John Amos left Good Times. The news stunned audiences. Many believed he left because his character was killed off, but in later interviews, Amos admitted he couldn't continue to be part of a show where the son JJ was being written as a clown, betraying everything they were trying to build. CBS responded by writing James Evans out of the script in a car accident. In 1976, John Amos departed the show in bitterness. Fans were shocked. The media labeled Walker the golden child of CBS, the star protected at all costs, even if it meant his colleagues had to go. Not long after, Esther also walked away. She told the New York Times she couldn't stay on a show where laughs mattered more than the truth. For 2 seasons, her character Florida Evans was absent, and the show fell into an identity crisis. Ratings dropped. CBS was eventually forced to bring back for the final season. But for Walker, it no longer mattered. The distance between him and had already hardened into a permanent fracture. The rumor of smiles on screen, coldness off screen. After Good Times ended in 1979, rumors spread that Walker and had cut ties, never speaking again. Many fans recalled Walker's absence from Roll's funeral in 1998. Some articles claimed he deliberately stayed away to avoid confronting the past. Whatever the truth, the image stuck in the public's mind. Jimmy Walker and Esther mother and son on-screen enemies in real life. Walker chose silence. No clarifications, no excuses. For nearly 4 decades, he seemed content to let the public write its own story. That very silence only made the speculation more mysterious. Fans believed and Walker had remained estranged until the end. Hollywood saw it as a prime example of the divisions that plagued early black sitcoms. And then, at 78, after more than 40 years of silence, Walker finally spoke in a rare interview. He admitted that Esther truly did dislike the way JJ was written, and yes, there had always been a distance between them that could never be bridged. But Walker also added that Esther didn't hate him. She hated the way the scripts wrote the character. They weren't enemies, but they were never really close, and he accepted that. It was a late admission, but also the first time Walker tore down the wall of silence. For decades, the public had only heard rumors, only seen harsh words. Now at nearly 80, he finally acknowledged that the fractures behind Good Times were real and that they had shaped both his career and his life. Today, when people look back on Good Times, they remember Dynamite and the explosive laughter. But to industry insiders, the legacy of the series is also a cautionary tale. The success of one character can fracture an entire cast, and sometimes laughter comes at a higher cost than tragedy itself. At 78, Jimmy Walker has finally broken his silence. Yet the shadows of Esther, Amos, and the lingering backstage rifts still surround him like scars that never fade. A sitcom written to celebrate black family life ultimately collapsed under the very laughter of J.J. Evans. And Jimmy Walker, the brightest star, became the loneliest one. Good Times ended, but isolation clung to Walker. And when he spoke out on politics, that isolation only deepened. If backstage drama had turned colleagues against him, his political statements would push him even further to the margins with controversial political views. While most black entertainers in Hollywood chose to stand with the Democratic Party, seeing it as the natural extension of a community tied to the civil rights movement. Jimmy Walker went in the completely opposite direction. He didn't just quietly cast his vote, he publicly declared it on television, sending shockwaves through the entertainment industry. In 2012, during an interview on Fox News, Walker stunned audiences when he bluntly said he had never voted for a Democrat in his life. This was more than a political statement. It felt like a declaration of war in a Hollywood, long considered a stronghold of progressive ideals. His words spread instantly, appearing across entertainment and political outlets, placing Jimmy Walker at the center of a media storm. In the years that followed, Walker continued to express his conservative views. He repeatedly voiced admiration for Ronald Reagan, describing him as a president who knew how to inspire and bring hope to America. What drew even more attention was Walker's open praise of Donald Trump. He didn't hesitate to say that he found Trump practical and believed Republican policies were a better fit for black people, a stance sharply at odds with the majority of voices in the African American artistic community. His remarks sparked a deep divide within the black community. Many saw Walker as a contrarian, even labeling him a betrayer of collective ideals. On forums and in the press, countless articles raised the same question. Why would a black sitcom star align himself with a party so often accused of being out of touch with the community's needs? Among conservatives, however, Walker was praised. Many commentators hailed him as one of the rare voices brave enough to break through Hollywood's false consensus. The result was that Jimmy Walker became a polarizing figure, celebrated by one side, fiercely condemned by the other. In the 1970s, Walker was the shining star of good times. But by the 2000s and 2010s, his acting career had faded. His outspoken political statements made it even harder for him to find a place in Hollywood, a town that prizes consensus and staying on trend. Directors and producers often avoided mentioning Walker. Major talk shows rarely invited him, though he continued performing stand-up comedy, touring across many states. The name Jimmy Walker slowly disappeared from the spotlight of mainstream entertainment. What's striking is that Walker never showed regret. On the contrary, he declared he lived by what he believed, and if Hollywood didn't like it, he was fine with that. He wasn't going to change just to be loved. It was the statement of a man fully aware of the price of being different. He accepted being shunned, accepted losing opportunities, but refused to compromise his beliefs. Today, when people look back at Jimmy Walker's career, they don't just remember good times in Dynamite. They also remember him as a black entertainer who dared to carve his own path no matter the backlash. For many, he is a contrarian voice, blunt, unafraid to go against the majority. For others, he is a symbol of division, a man whose choices betrayed community expectations. Love him or hate him, no one can deny this. His political views transformed Jimmy Walker from a sitcom star into a polarizing figure for decades. After shaking Hollywood with his political remarks, Walker was again pressed for his opinion on another of America's hottest issues, same-sex marriage. And once more, his answer pushed him into the center of controversy. In a 2012 CNN interview, Walker was asked about gay marriage. Then, one of the nation's most heated debates, he responded plainly that personally he was not a fan of gay marriage. But at the same time, if it became law, he wasn't going to fight it. It was a statement that revealed both his personal stance and his respect for the law. But in 2012, at the height of the fight for marriage equality, those words were enough to ignite another storm of criticism. To some, Walker was too conservative, but to others, his position seemed moderate. He didn't support it, but he didn't oppose it either. A kind of compromise rarely seen in America's polarizing political debates. Walker also drew attention with his views on affirmative action. In multiple interviews, he stated affirmative action was necessary at one point, but that point had passed. To him, the policy served its purpose in the decades after the civil rights movement, but continuing, it would only create dependency and reverse discrimination. His words struck a nerve in the black community. Many accused him of forgetting his roots and denying the benefits of a policy that once helped black people move forward. Yet others argued that Walker was brave enough to say the uncomfortable truth that it was time to compete based on merit. To understand why these statements were so controversial, you need to look at the social context of America at the time. In 2012, same-sex marriage was still deeply divisive in public opinion. For a black star who had risen from an iconic sitcom to take a stance of not in support left audiences stunned. Affirmative action was considered a historic achievement of the civil rights movement. So when Walker said it was outdated, it was seen as swimming against the tide. Audiences who once saw J.J. Evans as a symbol of young black life in poverty now watched the real Jimmy Walker seemingly reject policies meant to support that very community. The shock was even greater. He was already regarded as an outlier in Hollywood, and these remarks only reinforced that image. His words weren't just personal opinions. They became labels permanently tied to his name. While many of his peers stayed quiet or aligned with the majority, Walker bluntly chose a different path. With these statements, Jimmy Walker once again placed himself squarely against the grain. He had no legal scandals, no messy love affairs splashed across tabloids, but his political and social views alone made him one of the most controversial figures among black entertainers. Agree or disagree, no one could deny it. Walker never chose the safe road. He was always willing to pay the price for being outspoken. Even in his private life, Jimmy chose an unconventional path. No marriage, no kids. Even in his personal life, Jimmy chose a rare path. In countless interviews, he stood firm, repeating his most shocking line. He had never been married, had no kids, and that's how it was going to be. This wasn't a joke. It was a conviction he held for decades, no matter how much curiosity or speculation it stirred. In a Hollywood overflowing with lavish weddings and high-profile divorces, Walker was almost a total exception. Of course, that doesn't mean Walker never had romances. Throughout his career, the press often speculated about his dating life, but the most talked about and controversial rumor was his alleged relationship with Ann Coulter, the well-known conservative political commentator. In the early 2000s, major outlets like People and the New York Post reported that Jimmy Walker and Ann Coulter were secretly dating. The story spread quickly because the pairing seemed so unlikely. A black actor, once the face of a beloved 70s sitcom, and a sharp-tongued conservative pundit known for igniting heated debates. The rumors caught fire when Norm Macdonald, a famous comedian, casually revealed on a talk show that Ann Coulter was going out with Jimmy Walker. That single line instantly turned gossip into headline news nationwide. A polarizing conservative commentator romantically linked to a black sitcom star from the 1970s. Soon after, outlets from the Huffington Post to the New York Post picked up the story. People magazine even dubbed them the most unlikely couple in America. But both Walker and Coulter kept things vague. In a later interview, Ann Coulter said Jimmy was one of the greatest people she'd ever met, kind, funny, and real. Walker, however, stayed silent, neither confirming nor denying. That ambiguity only fueled public curiosity. Was there truly a romantic relationship between them, or just an unusual friendship, a choice, or a life of solitude? What shocked the public even more was Walker's complete lack of regret over his decision to live a life without marriage or children. When asked about marriage, he bluntly replied that marriage was not for him. He didn't see himself being a husband or a father. For many, that was baffling. They asked, how could a man who was once famous across America, wealthy, talented, choose to live alone? But for Walker, it didn't seem like sadness. It was freedom. He once explained that he saw so many of his colleagues get married, then divorced, then miserable, and he didn't want that. Didn't want to take on responsibilities he knew he couldn't carry. Public opinion split in two. Some saw Walker as a Hollywood oddity, a star with no interest in love, marriage, or children. Others viewed him as a symbol of honesty, someone unafraid to live. Differently, refusing to bow to social norms. On social media, many comments called him the loner star. Whether with admiration or skepticism, that image became inseparable from Walker's name, casting his private life under a constant air of mystery. At 78, Jimmy Walker still holds the same stance. He has never had a wedding, never been a father, and has shown no intention of changing. His private life stands as a declaration. Not everyone needs a family to feel complete. In many ways, his choice to live without a wife, without children, made Jimmy Walker unique in the eyes of the public. To some, it's eccentricity. To him, it's simply the truth. A life lived on his own terms. The catchphrase Dynamite carried him from a poor Bronx childhood to national stardom. But it also trapped him in the overwhelming shadow of J.J. Evans, And from there, Walker's career seemed to follow a downward curve. Still laughter, still lights, but never again the explosive heights of his past. The 1980s brought Walker a few opportunities, but none strong enough to redefine his name. In 1980, he appeared in the satirical blockbuster Airplane, a massive box office hit. Though only a minor role, Walker's presence was enough to make audiences cheer when they heard his unmistakable voice. He continued to pop up in sitcoms such as The Love Boat, Fantasy Island, and later The Drew Carey Show and Scrubs. Occasionally, Walker was invited onto major talk shows to repeat his famous Dynamite catchphrase, but these were only scattered bright spots, never enough to bring him back into Hollywood's center stage. With fewer acting roles, Walker returned to his roots, the stand-up stage. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, he toured across the United States, performing in small clubs, casinos in Las Vegas and Atlantic City, and even theaters with just a few hundred seats. Compared to the millions of viewers from his Good Times days, the scale was modest. But for Walker, it was proof that he still mattered. As he bluntly put it, television can forget you, but if he got on stage and people still laughed, then he still existed. The laughter from a small club audience didn't echo like the applause on CBS, but it kept Walker tied to the craft that lifted him out of the Bronx, the gift of making people laugh, a symbol trapped between past and present. The bitter reality was that audiences still loved Jimmy Walker, but mostly they loved J.J. Evans of the 1970s. Each time Walker stepped on stage, they weren't waiting for a new routine. They were waiting for him to shout, "Dynamite." Walker himself admitted he never really escaped J.J. Evans. He knew it, and he'd learned to accept it. So no matter the new projects or tours, Walker remained a faded legend, remembered but never expected at 78 years old. When many stars of his generation have long stepped away, Jimmy Walker continues to surprise with his persistence. Though far removed from his peak, he still performs stand-up, still takes part in small film projects, and still connects with audiences with his signature blunt honesty. According to public sources, Walker's net worth is estimated around $800,000, with other outlets reporting between $500,000 and $1.5 million. While it pales compared to the multi-million-dollar fortunes of his peers, it is enough to live comfortably, especially for an artist who chose to go against the grain in both career and personal life. What stands out is that Walker never flaunted lavish mansions or luxury cars. Instead, he is remembered for his simplicity, living modestly, focusing on his craft and passion rather than chasing extravagance. A star still working, never retired. Instead, he continues to tour the stand-up circuit. From small clubs in Las Vegas and Atlantic City to special events like his 2025 double bill with comedian Lenny Clark at Martha's Vineyard, he still steps onto the stage, still chasing the familiar sound of laughter. He even shared candidly that television can forget you, but if he got on stage and people still laughed, then he still existed. It wasn't just a line. It was the life philosophy of an entertainer who refuses to disappear. Even past 70, Walker refuses to fade. He continues touring, often alongside other comics. In 2025, he appeared with Lenny Clark in a special show at the Martha's Vineyard Film Center, proof that Walker could still make audiences laugh even in smaller venues. More notably, in 2025, he took on a role in the film Forgotten Fortune. Shot in Oklahoma alongside Lou Fino, it wasn't a major role, but it marked a significant return to the screen. After years of mostly appearing in documentaries, Walker joked he joined late, didn't know the whole script, but still loved being in front of the camera. He also revealed that he is preparing a new book reflecting on his acting career and his views on political correctness, which he claims has made comedy harder than ever. If published, it would follow his 2012 memoir and would no doubt spark new controversy. Beyond film and writing, Walker remains present in community activities. In 2024, he joined a dermatology campaign promoting free skin cancer screenings. Though modest, these efforts showed his ongoing desire to engage with the public in different ways. Walker has no multi-million-dollar mansions or flashy cars. He chooses a simple lifestyle, often moving with his tour schedule, living in temporary apartments in the cities where he works. Recently, while filming Forgotten Fortune, Walker lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a clear sign of his flexible, down-to-earth life. Are you enjoying this story? Jimmy Walker, good times? Then help the channel grow. Look, 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you're part of that group, take the chance and subscribe right now. It's free, and that way, you'll keep receiving amazing stories from TV shows that we still miss a lot. And don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll find more stories like this one. Jimmy Walker, Good Times. Jimmy Walker will not leave behind sprawling estates or a long resume of starring roles. What he leaves is one short catchphrase, powerful enough to etch itself into a generation's memory. Dynamite, that laugh, though debated, proves Walker touched audiences in a way no one else could. A life lived against the current. A life lived alone, but one lived by his own choice. Hollywood may no longer shine its spotlight on Walker, but each time laughter erupts in a small club, each time Dynamite resurfaces on YouTube, Jimmy Walker lives on, not as a dazzling star, but as an immortal symbol of American television history. All data, analyses, and commentary presented are based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore. Stories of resilience, legacy, and truth.